Good day, welcome to the Automotive Dad and welcome to the 2024 MG ZS. Now the ZS has had a relatively big update, all new inside and out, and that means that this is now powered by a 1.5 litre 4-cylinder petrol engine and electric motors. It's a hybrid. Those two combined produce 196 PS, 465 newton meters of torque, and it also gets to 62 miles an hour in 8.7 seconds with a top speed of 104 miles an hour. But all of that aside, does this present itself as a good family car? Let's take a look around and see. The front end is where you can tell a big revision has happened because, well, this looks nothing like the previous generation ZS. Nice light clusters, cool grille design, and nice, almost aggressive styling, but not too aggressive, sort of sporty. The whole front end just looks nicely refined and curved, and it's not one of these cars that are a little bit Marmite, a bit like the front end of the MG3. This one actually is quite, you can get on board with it almost straight away. The front profile I really like. Side profile though, nothing really seems to have changed too much because the side profile reminds me that quite strongly of the previous generation ZS. However, these 17-inch diamond cut alloys look nice. This being an SE instead of a trophy, gets 17-inch wheels instead of 18s. That's not a bad thing because these 17s have a bit more meat on them, and it means that they deal with UK roads nicely, and it means that they're not going to get battered by potholes. But the side profile itself is a nice looking thing, and I said that on when I had a first look at the last generation ZS. It looks good. I just feel like they could have done a little bit more to differentiate between the previous gen and this one, but it's no bad thing. It just hasn't had a massive update. It looks quite similar, although it has had a massive update, if you see what I mean. Now the back end has definitely been hit by the redesigned stick because it has been awesomely redesigned. The previous generation ZS, I guess I saw so many of them, I started getting a little bit bored. It was a bit bland for me, but this is anything but. It's nice, it's curvy, cool light design. It's just well put together. And that fog light down there in the middle reminding me somewhat of an F1 car. Obviously, this is far from an F1 car, but the rear design isn't boring. In fact, the whole exterior design isn't boring. Chinese manufacturers are not making these stylistically boring cars with cool tech. They're now making really good looking cars, still with loads of tech. So aesthetically, this will stand out among the Qashqais and the Q5s because MG have put their special touch on it and it looks really cool. Now the big thing when you step into the ZS is that the interior has had a huge update. And by update, it's because it's an all-new car. This interior is nothing like the previous ZS. It feels almost premium, whilst not being premium, obviously. It's just over a £20,000 car. But the quality of the materials is absolutely second to none. There's actual buttons, everything feels nice, there's a good amount of technology, there's loads of space, and it's just really well executed. These seats are incredibly comfortable, and I obviously get quite a lot of cars over the years, and my wife said that these are the most comfortable that she's been in besides our own car. And when we chose our car, it was kind of important it had comfortable seats anyway. And it's a really, really big thing for passenger comfort to be comfortable and for her to be able to get a seating position that's good enough whilst having two ISOFIX car seats in the back and not affect them as well. Really important. Now the actual seating position itself is comfortable. Everything is at your fingertips, and even in an SE spec you get absolutely bundles of technology as standard, including your Apple CarPlay, a really good sounding sound system as standard. Obviously you don't get a dimming rear view mirror, you have to flick it down, a little bit old school in that regard. You don't have folding wing mirrors, they have to be pushed in yourself when you park up, but they are electric, they're not heated. But then when you get into the actual infotainment system and the actual electronic part of this car, it has so much technology for collision assist, almost self-driving, and everything's at your fingertips. The regenerative selection is of a button. There aren't actual panels on here, but you can assign it to star keys on here so that you can choose how heavy your regen braking is. And there are cubby holes everywhere, literally everywhere. This has been incredibly well thought out. Now, the kids zone, which I don't have car seats in because this car was supposed to go back today, but I've been so ill. Anyway, the kids zone is an important zone to have comfort, accessibility, and this has both of those things, whilst also not intruding into any other areas of the car. Set your seating position however you want, you won't affect the rear seats. Whilst it can be a little tight getting the actual, if you've got 360 ISOFIX spin seats in, only because the door space is not huge, once they're in there are no problems whatsoever. Now, it's not a massively wide car, so you can't spin both inwards, but the rear seat capability is more than acceptable. You can fit 3 adults, full-sized adults back here. Good size, even 6 for adults, and they're not going to complain because there's so much headroom. And that's really important. This is a very versatile family car that could see you through from baby to university student, all in one guise. And honestly, it's seriously impressive just how this relatively small crossover SUV is so practical inside. Now, the back end is, I guess, impressive and annoying to me at the same time, because whilst this boot is pretty big, it can take your prams and your bits and pieces really easily. This is a standard size acoustic guitar, and it barely fits width-wise because there's a lot of wheel ingress in the boot. So while it is a very deep boot, it's not very wide, so something to keep in mind. But the access height isn't too high. It is bigger being a crossover SUV, but it's easy enough to get stuff in and out. The boot size itself is not terrible. It's just not very wide. And really, that's my only criticism of the boot. Otherwise, it's a fully functional, easy to use area. You can see this car's doing quite well in just being quite good at everything, right? Now, the drive of this car was the most surprising thing for me, because I kind of anticipated aesthetically it being a big change, but I didn't anticipate the drive also being so different in a good way. Previous generation ZS drove nicely, don't get me wrong, but this generation ZS drives exceptionally well. That 4-cylinder 1.5 litre petrol engine combined with the electric motors is 196 PS, 465 newton meters of torque, so it doesn't hang around. But all of that is combined with the fact that this is actually just a thoroughly good driving car that has a nice steering feel, good brake feel. Obviously, as I said, it's got more than enough power, so when you do need to put your foot down, it moves. But it's also incredibly comfortable to drive. Visibility is pretty decent. The A-pillar doesn't really ingress in too much. So your visibility is quite good. You have blind spot monitors to make sure that you're not changing lane into someone, even though actually the visibility should be so good that you're not anyway. And it's got a 3-speed automatic gearbox that kind of acts more like a CVT than an automatic gearbox. But the way that this drives is just not what I expected. And I can only liken it really to something like a Toyota Corolla. And that is a real compliment, because for me, they are incredibly comfortable cars that drive really well, the new generation hybrids. And this drives just as well, if not better in its own regard. This is only like a 1.4 ton car, so in corners it doesn't feel mega weighty. The brakes feel nice. It's not a performance car by any means, but it doesn't have a boring drive. The technology that's on board this car doesn't interfere too much, doesn't get in the way, does bong at you if you go anywhere near the speed limit, but hey, every single car possible now does. And economy-wise, they say that on paper you should be able to get up to 150 miles to the gallon. I find that a little difficult to believe, just based on my own driving cycles and really trying. Maybe if the onboard battery was fully charged, the engine was up to temperature, and you were sort of on a completely flat playing field, if not downhill, then yeah. But what is totally achievable every single day of the week is about 50 miles to the gallon. Because while I was driving to start filming this morning, the car averaged 65 to the gallon around town. That is hugely impressive, because prior to today, the car had been kind of sat at about 45 around town and about 55 on a run. All of a sudden, the car started giving me these simply gargantuous economy figures, which I am not anti by any means, but it's because I sort of changed my driving style to like an electric driving style, and in doing so, the car really prefers that. The only negative from the drive is actually based on the semi-budget tyres. They're not like your Michelins or your Pirellis, so when it gets a bit cold out, this car can kind of act a bit like Bambi on ice, which is not what I expected of it, but hilarious by the same merit. I'm glad MG have updated this, because the previous generation ZS was good and a lot of people liked it, but this generation of ZS is just really, really, really good. And if you're considering one, I implore you to go and try one, because honestly, it is that good. And right now, I'm going to put it on a semi-self-driving mode, where it can see every parked car. It even tells me about oncoming cars. It even tells you if someone's tailgating you, if you had missed it in your rearview mirror. It says, warning, car behind too close. And I've never experienced that before in a car, so the drive is 10 out of 10. Genuinely 10 out of 10. It's not a performance car, but as family cars go, this is about everything that you could possibly want. So is the MG ZS a good car? Well, yeah, because to get such economy out of such a little engine is impressive, but combine that with the fact that it drives really well and it's very comfortable, it's very practical. Aesthetically, it stands out enough whilst not being too shouty, but equally is a very good looking car. And the fact that it costs just over £20,000 in an SE spec. Obviously, if you go for a trophy, you're getting closer to like £24,000–25,000, but combine all that together and you see that this is a seriously well packaged car that's affordable, full of tech, extremely safe, and family friendly. The most key point of all of this. This car is incredibly family friendly. So I think MG have done a very good job of making this a very good family friendly car.